Watch this.
How much we might pay in taxes and what those taxes might pay for has been the center of congressional negotiations for weeks. And that's expected to continue, according to Congressman Mike Simpson, who hopes to clear up some of the bill's language and its misconceptions. The mountain town of McCall is well known for skiing on both forms of water. But that doesn't mean you can just decorate to recreate, or can you? One local business is finding out.
The exhibition looks like a lot of really different things, but it's all held together in a really powerful way.
What holds this exhibition together is hate, or rather, turning that hate on its side and creating something to love. A preview of Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate, coming to Boise. Well, we've heard the chatter from Capitol Hill and across the country for the past several weeks. The massive domestic policy bill, what President Trump calls the big, beautiful bill, barely passed the House last week and awaits possible changes in the Senate. One of those changes happened prior to the House vote, and it was a win for Idaho in the West. A provision to allow the selling of public lands was taken out, which is why Idaho's congressmen changed their vote to a yes. So what other changes might we expect from the Senate side? And is this bill actually big and beautiful, or is it just huge and harmful? Joe Paris gets a breakdown from Congressman Mike Simpson about health care, Social Security, and farm worker reform.
Major moments in Washington as the Republican-controlled Congress tries to implement President Trump's vision for America.
We're pretty busy right now trying to enact the Budget Reconciliation Act and get all our. We're starting the appropriations process right now. And
Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson joins us this week on Viewpoint. As someone who presided over debate of the big, beautiful bill, Simpson says he has seen national headlines about its text that are just not true, like it gutting social programs.
There's been a lot of things said that just aren't true. Mm-hmm. We're not taking away people's Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security. No one's going to lose those things if you qualify for the programs. But if you don't qualify for a program, should you be getting the benefit? If you're here illegally, should you be getting Medicare or Medicaid? I don't think so. So yeah, some people like that will probably lose that benefit because we will get it back to what it's originally intended to do, and that's to help those people in need. And if we don't get it, if we don't get it back to its original intention, that will be the biggest threat to these programs. Mm-hmm. And so it was important to do that, but there's a lot of rhetoric going on out there that's just simply not true.
Despite arguments from Democrats, that directive, Simpson adds, comes from the president himself.
When President Trump came down to our conference, this was like 3 or 4 days before we passed the bill. And one of the things that impressed me that he says, don't you guys screw around with Medicare. He said, you'll never win with that, and it's not a good idea, and it's not the right thing to do. So he told us not to screw around with Medicare. We weren't going to anyway because we knew that was politically very unpopular.
On Social Security, the congressman says changes are needed, but that doesn't mean elimination. The goal is sustainability.
They've made changes over the years. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill made some changes that extended the life of it a generation. Now we've got to look at it and say, how can we make this program sustainable for the future? Because if you're a young person starting to pay into Social Security, you know, they've done polls, and I've seen them that say a young person just starting to work and paying money into Social Security believes they're more likely to meet an alien than they are to get Social Security. And they may be right if we don't change the system somehow. And that's not taking any benefit away from anybody that's currently getting it, but in the future we've got to make some changes.
Another big topic for Simpson right now is Idaho focused, figuring out the H-2A visa program to bolster staffing across agriculture. The Farm Workforce Modernization Act, targeted at guest workers with non-citizen status.
What we've done is put together a bill that says, okay, you come out from the woodwork, you have to pay a fine, we do a criminal background check, that kind of stuff, and then you stay employed in agriculture for a number of years, you get a permanent green card, and you can come and go, which I think is the right thing to do. If you're here from Mexico and your mother dies somewhere in Mexico and you decide to go home to the funeral, and then you can come back to work and stuff. That's a humane thing to do. And the reality is we need these people.
And something else I spoke with the congressman about, a very Idaho issue that we've covered here on the 208. For example, the dairy industry is not a seasonal industry. As the congressman put it, cows don't stop producing milk because it's times for H-2A workers to go home. So, Brian, it's something that at the federal level is being talked about now. Congressman Simpson leading that effort on modernizing the farm workers. He used an example from recent years that there were 4,000 openings in agriculture. Only 4 Americans were willing to take the jobs. 3 of those 4 quit after the first day.
That's what we've heard a lot as well. So has he heard that from Idahoans? Because we know that there's a lot of loud voices on the other side of that say we need to clamp down on this. But has he heard from those that aren't quite as loud?
Absolutely, and he's hearing from people that run the operations where no matter where you sit on the political spectrum, there is a reality about how this business is set up.
Yep.
And that's something that he wants to, at the federal level and state level, maintain these operations with the truth of there are these guest workers that are part of that success.
Okay, and there's also a talk on this bill that still has to go through the Senate about shifting some of these Medicaid expansion costs back to the states. That could implicate or put some of that burden back on Idaho.
And that's one of the things that came up during the state legislature and these conditions that continue Medicaid and expansion. To be clear, that was about Medicaid. Medicare is something that the president and you heard Congressman say they're not going to touch.
Not going to touch that. All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Well, is it better to ask for permission or to ask for forgiveness? A small business in McCall is learning the answer to that question in their battle with the city over how they can bedeck their building. They sell clothing, but they decided to decorate their roof with hundreds of brightly colored water skis. Is it a violation of city code or a temporary art installation? Aspen Shumpert went up to McCall to try to answer that question.
Inside, you can look around for a McCall hoodie or a t-shirt, something to make you remember the town.
We've really tried to capture the essence of McCall, give people something to leave home with, to memorialize their trip there.
That was the same idea for what you see on the store's roof.
A lot of people learned how to water ski on Payette Lake, and we had access to a bunch of water skis that we had collected over the years.
Cade Huskinson is the owner of Laketown Clothing Company, and he lined his roof with about 200 water skis back in the summer of 2023.
As we were looking at the building, it's the perfect length for some water skis, so we threw them up there and lined the roof line with water skis to kind of capture that spirit of McCall.
I personally like the aesthetic of the skis on the roof.
I think that's a great way to draw people into that business and having a more vibrant downtown.
But Huskinson quickly learned those skis weren't within city code and design standards.
It was just an aesthetic violation because of some of the bright colors on the skis and because the skis are made out of plastic and fiberglass. But at the same time, their comprehensive plan for what McCall is going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years talks about public art and character and uniqueness.
And they're kind of fitting into that retro ski resort motif. And I actually love the color.
It fits in this town for sure. They're the people, boats, water skis.
Huskinson tried to appeal the planning and zoning decision, leading to a hearing with City Council back in January of 2024.
Admittedly, we did it without permission. I didn't know that I had to get permission for something like that.
For that hearing, at least 400 McCall residents wrote Council wanting the skis to stay up and that they capture the character of McCall. But Council sided with its staff, citing code obligations.
It's what we have written, and we're obligated to hold to that. But it highlights something that I've been frustrated with for a long, long time.
Huskinson took the skis down the next day with confidence Council would reevaluate its design code.
Because I don't want 2 more years to go by and for you to feel that, our code's messed up.
If they want a vibrant feel, then they need to let people do unique things.
And here we are 17 months later and it hasn't happened. It hasn't even been on the agenda. And to the city's credit, they have other things to worry about than skis on a roof. I'm not that naive to think that this would be the top priority on their list, but it's a top priority on my list and it's a top priority on my customers' list. And so I felt like I owed it to the citizens and owed it to my customers to put the skis back up.
So, after tired of waiting 17 months for a change in code that hasn't happened yet, he put the skis back up this month, giving the people what they want.
We've received countless people have been reaching out, supporting us. They've been I walked into the hardware store the other day and And one of the ladies that I know pretty well there started applauding because she saw the skis there. While we were putting up, a man on his bike rode by and he's like, "The skis are back. Yeah, let's go." I've got the voice of the citizens that are saying, we love what this did for McCall. And then I have the city who's also saying, we love what it did for McCall, but it's not up to code.
As a fellow business owner, I'm always trying to find a creative way to decorate my business and make it as unique as possible. So I understand putting them back up.
So the skis have been back up for about a week. I actually have an extra one here in my hand that didn't make the cut to get back up. But the owner tells me that the plan is to take them down at the end of the summer because some council members had concerns about snowfall and people having to walk underneath that. He did send council and the mayor a letter letting them know that he put them back up. We reached out to the mayor, city council, and a few city staff members to ask them about that. Neither of them were able to give us a comment today, specifically an interview, but their communications director said they did receive that letter. They're working on a response to that letter, and they're reminding businesses and residents to follow the protocols. But she did say that they plan to revisit the design standards in the upcoming fiscal year when they do a comprehensive plan update, Brian.
Okay, so Aspen, this first started back in 2023. A lot of people like seeing these skis on the rooftop. They want to have a vibrant downtown. Why is this taking so long to get this code to kind of mesh with what they want?
Yeah, 17 months of kind of trying to figure out, can we put them back up? What do we do? And the communications director tells me it's been this delay because the city feels it's better to evaluate something like this when we're talking about design standards, when there's an opportunity to do it at a larger scale, like a comprehensive plan.
Okay, so I guess then we'll just wait to see at the end of the summer. We'll be taking it back down, see how it goes from there. All right, thank you very much, Aspen. All right, well, we are 91 days away until the Boise State football, not home opener, but opener in Florida. But we're one day away from the Boise Greek Food Festival, so you don't have to wait that long. Brenda Rodriguez has details on Dolomades and when the Broncos will play their Mountain West foes in today's 411.
Lori Vallow-Daybell's latest effort to get a new judge on her case was denied. The Eastern Idaho mom is gearing up for her third trial in 2 years. She was previously convicted for killing her kids in Idaho and conspiring to kill her former husband in Arizona. The latest trial in Arizona, she's accused of conspiring to kill her niece's ex-husband. She's representing herself and has pleaded not guilty. Earlier this month, she asked Judge Justin Bursky to rescue himself, claiming that he had a bias against her. The judge said that he wouldn't do that. This morning, another judge heard her motion to remove Judge Bursky. That motion was denied. Jury selection for her latest trial is underway right now, and opening statements are set to start next week. Get ready, Bronco fans. We're 3 months out from the Broncos season opener. But today we officially have kickoff dates and times for Mountain West play. Boise State will have 10 games on the Fox family of networks or on the CBS networks. You can see those on the right side of the graphic. The Broncos will also hit the road against Notre Dame on Saturday, October 4th. You can watch that game right here on KTVB. This year's Greek Food Festival kicks off tomorrow at St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church on Bannock Street in Boise. The festival will have food, music, and dancing, church tours, and a market. The church grounds open at 11 a.m. both tomorrow and Saturday, and then things wrap up each evening at 9 p.m. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Brenda Rodriguez.
You ever heard of the creativity movement? I hadn't either until today. But it's the foundation of an art exhibit opening in 3 locations across Boise this evening. The creativity movement was the belief of a violent white supremacist group that considered Hitler a religious prophet. They would hold their annual meeting in the unironically named town of Superior, Montana, a stone's throw from the Idaho border. Back in 2003, one of the leaders from the Montana faction decided he'd had enough, and he stepped away from the organization. But he took with him more than 4,000 books the creativity movement had in its library, and he sold them to the Montana Human Rights Network. Okay, so what do you do with 4,000 bigotry-based Bibles? Well, you take those negatives and you turn them into positives, or more specifically, you turn it into a 12-year cross-country traveling art exhibit that is visiting Boise for the first time.
This is Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate. Well, we literally started with volumes, 4,500 volumes of white supremacist neo-Nazi propaganda, 13 titles, all by the same author.
That author is Ben Clausen, who started the Church of the Creator in 1973, a white supremacist religion, the foundation of the creativity movement.
Their message is, Jews are the source of all evil in the world. All people of color are the mud race, and they're just being used by the Jews. And the white race is nature's finest, and racial loyalty is the most important thing.
So thousands of books based on racism. Simply destroying them was too tempting. But curator Katie Knight knew that would also ruin an opportunity.
So we transformed those volumes with the goal of transforming hate, with the goal of helping people become more kind and compassionate, considerate, and work for social justice.
The first call out for contributors returned 99 works of art from 60 different artists. This travel version shows just 46.
Every place it's gone, there's been profound dialogue.
Pieces either inspired by or literally integrating the books.
The economically depressed areas formerly inhabited by our culturally diverse friends would now have been renovated. The point of this edit is to take an extremely prejudiced, racist, anti-Semitic perspective and invert the meaning.
Or even inverting a historical symbol of hate.
There's 2 different orientations of the swastika. It can be in a positive motion, which is what mine is, or it can be reversed.
One of the central pieces comes from Clarissa Sly. Once the central figure in a school integration court case, Clarissa put her personal experiences into creating 1,000 peace cranes, folded from pages of the book.
And is asking, as she's doing this, can we transform hate? How can we transform hate? Believe me, I ask myself that. You know, is it possible? Is it possible that if people were more open-minded and saw each other as, complex human beings like ourselves, would we have a more just and equitable society?
It's a question considered daily at Boise's Wassmuth Center for Human Rights.
These are, books that date back decades, and unfortunately, the messaging is very much alive and what we're hearing and seeing in our country and beyond in this time. It isn't new. We have seen this before, and we have seen this before, so we have work to continue to do.
And that's the message they hope is taken from this exhibit.
I want them to go out and reflect on how we live together and how to live together in a more peaceful, respectful, mutually supportive, collaborative society.
Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate opens this evening. It's actually happening right now at the Irma Heyman House on Boise's River Street until 7 tonight. But as you can see, Irma's house isn't quite big enough to hold the whole exhibition, so they spread it out across 2 other locations in Boise. That'd be the Wassmuth Center for Human Rights and the Albertsons Library at Boise State. The whole exhibit runs through August 8th, so you have some time to check it out. A full schedule is posted on the Wassmuth Center website, and you can find a link to that in this story on our website at ktvb.com.
right, Boise has officially reached 90 degrees for the first time this year. In fact, right now we're sitting at 91, a scorching May afternoon. Mid-80s in Sun Valley, upper 70s for McCall. Twin Falls, you're sitting at 86 degrees. A couple thunderstorms and light showers could fire off over the mountains this evening, but we will stay hot, dry, and clear across the Treasure Valley. An uptick in those winds is very possible as we have a very weak and dry cold front that is going to come through this evening. That will tamp down the heat just a tiny bit. Tomorrow we'll land in the upper 80s to right around 90 in the Treasure Valley, mid 80s to wrap up the work week in the Magic Valley, sunny and warm in the mountains with those low 80s. Then we turn our attention to Saturday. This will be the peak of this spring heat wave. A heat advisory is in place for all of eastern Oregon and the Treasure and western Magic Valleys. First alert weather conditions for highs up near 100 degrees. Then a welcome cool down starts taking shape starting Sunday.
Get right to your comments here. This first one from Steve, who says Simpson and the GOP believe only ag immigrant guest jobs need reforms. What about the millions of construction, service, janitorial, other immigrant jobs needed in America? Really, he asks. Well, I would love to believe what Congressman Simpson is saying. However, that's not what's coming from Republicans' mouths. I've heard differently. So I guess those of us that are on Social Security and Medicare will have to wait and see how they get to play with our health care and our money that we paid into, says BNB. Meanwhile, Chuck wants to give credit to Mike Simpson for at least showing up and talking about the bill and answering our questions. Only Congressman Simpson is willing to be interviewed. The rest seem to be running scared and don't care to account for their stances on that. SK in Boise says, I would urge everyone to go to the Congressional Budget Office website and kind of take a look at the analysis of this bill. There you get kind of perspective that you're not getting from a politician. So if you want some questions answered there, you can do that. Meanwhile, let's move over to the other story we talked about, the Transforming Hate exhibit that's taking place in Boise State at the Wasma Center and at the Irma Heyman House in Boise. Interesting history tells us Jesus Christ was a Jew and a man of color, not a white man or a Christian. Ignorance breeds hatred. Knowledge promotes truth. Yes, well, Christianity became because of Jesus Christ. We get that. But your point is well taken, and that is what you can experience and see at the exhibit if you see that through August 8th. Meanwhile, Jane says, hey, what good is the football schedule without the dates? Guess what? You can find all of that at ktvb.com. We couldn't lay the entire thing out for you, but you can find it there, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.